Hello and welcome to our new show, Secret Sauce, where we have questions posed by you guys and ourselves to people within the industry to have a deeper look at what goes on within the esports industry. In this season, we're tackling coaching, and we have two experienced coaches with us, Vetrezz and Mr. G. We have myself, Jamil, and Omar as well on the show. And without further ado, let's start. So for this question, we have when can you tell that a lack of action is caused by fear? When is it when is it complacency? And how do we solve that in both cases? So we see that this is something, for example, like in a review, for example, or in feedback, someone who wants to, if we're talking a little bit, taking a note from the previous question, a player wants to receive feedback from a coach, but they can't take action, or like they're not following a game plan. Someone tells them to do something, they're not doing it. Either it can be arrogance, like we've seen in the last question, which is terrible, or it could also be something like fear, which is stopping them, and it's something hidden. So it can be also looked as seen as complacency, because you can see someone as lazy, although they're just procrastination is fear-based, more or less. You don't want to do something because fear of failure, for example. And remedying that might be through communication, but I want to ask this because also you're more knowledgeable in this. So you want to start this off, Vetrezz, or?
Yeah, sure. That's actually a very good question, because I had two individuals who I could instantly think about at this question. And there's two different kind of player types. One of them played a whole season not in my team, but I talked with a good friend of mine who is also a coach, and he had them in a team, and he told me the whole story. So this player was always he seemed a bit arrogant or too good for some task that he got what he had to learn. But he then went into a podcast in his home country, in his home language, which had subtitles on, and in that podcast he revealed that he was hiding all of his fear of failure under his own ego that he put up, because he was just scared of doing something wrong in that high league where he was playing. So after him being kicked after 1 year of him not achieving anything, they never really found out that he was actually just he had a lot of fear of failure, and it was not arrogance or something. So this is something which is actually hard to notice sometimes. I also had contact with another friend of mine. I will just call it a friend coach, basically, who told me about his player, and he was constantly overthinking his own actions the whole time. So that in the end led to his own failure. And those kind of players are really hard to even teach, because they are so scared of their own failure that they sometimes don't even let coaches in to actually coach them, because they will start acting or they're just trying to prevent any of those mistakes, and they're putting themselves under so much pressure that they can probably not or never perform at their highest level. I think Mr. G also has some good examples of that in his own coaching.
I have to say, I've been thinking this one through while you were speaking, Vetrezz, and I can see what you're saying in there with different players. I'm going to take what I think is maybe the easier part first, complacency. Actually, no, I will take both of them at the same time. One of the things about the esport world that confuses me, Bill, is the speed of changing players. All right? The speed at which you're changing players and you're moving them between teams, and they have to constantly step into a new scenario, potentially even trials themselves can be very stressful. So they're trialing, then they play for a team, they play for a split, then they get changed out by the org, and there's all this moving around, and I'm pretty sure that is a good test of your personality and your character and everything that makes up who you are. And the reason why I say all of that is I'm a firm believer in, and my job is to get to know people. And sometimes you see it very quickly. You see certain elements very quickly. And other times you think something doesn't click. Like, I have this very, Vetrezz's example, a person with great ego, like bang, 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 out there all the time. And then they do something and you go, okay, that doesn't quite match up. And then you can confront it. But complacency, I think is easier to observe. I think a fear, because you can be scared of anything. Like, you're not born with fear, all right? It develops in some way, shape, or form. Spotting something as a fear, I believe, takes quite a deep dive into the person you're working with. And again, when they're busy changing, people who often have a fear of something and they don't want to show it have already developed a defense. And you have to try and get past that defense or see past that defense, be it ego, be it something else. And in my work, I've become more aware of not focusing on what they're showing me, but looking behind it. So whatever emotional element, whatever words, whatever comes there, I'm always asking the question, what does it tell me about the person? But you have to see it, and then you have to, this sounds really now a scientific experiment. You see something you're not sure about, you formulate a hypothesis, could it be this? Then you maybe test it out a little bit carefully, and then you can start to come up with ideas about how to address it. And fear is quite complex. It takes a little bit of care and caution when you're working with something that you identify. And I'll give you the easiest example that I can think of in the first instance, and that is people experience trauma while they're young too. And out of that trauma, you might end up with some very deep-rooted anxieties and fears and uncertainties. And if you spot something with a person, give you another maybe less comfortable example. You often see at a boot camp, you got all the players sitting there, and you see coaches walking up and down behind them and looking over their shoulder. But sometimes if you stand too close to a person, you feel how that makes them feel uncomfortable. Right? You're standing right there, but you have to be very aware that that's happening. You might not be aware. So there's so much involved with this question because you put the fear element in there for me, that I would say that the first most important thing is to observe, get to know, be neutral, not judge, and then move forward from there. And in terms of dealing with it, it's depends on what you're looking at there. Yeah. I prefer the complacency part.
Easier.
A little bit. Yeah. I don't know where to take this one for you. It's a good one. This one's going to keep me thinking for a while, I think.
Because it can go deep, like it can, because as you said, it's complex and it can go to many different places. You reminded me of something that's two things actually. Like when studying body language, for example, you learn to pick up cues, but these cues can, like for example, right now I'm reading up a little bit on NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. So, for example, they tell you like if you do something, that means this. If you're looking up to the right, for example, you're being creative or whatever. But that might also not be true because it could be just someone's habit. Like if someone's being defensive, yes, they're going to cross their arms, but it could also be just a posture that they've grown accustomed to doing, which reminds me of the whole, let's do a hypothesis, test the hypothesis, and see if it's really true or not. Because at the end, if you're just assuming and you're running on all these assumptions, it's going to do more bad than good. And yeah.
And I think that's an important part of coaching, which is understand that you're not necessarily right. Yeah. You often jump into situations to correct and change and do, but if you take into account that you might be in a room full of experts, then I think the first thing to do is neutrally observe, listen, pay attention to, and those sorts of things, and then slowly move forward from there. Experience does help, I will say that, but apart from that, when you're dealing with sensitive elements or sensitivities, then it's worth taking your time.
I want to ask, because you said you look into words and what people do and say. If they're not someone who shares much, they have fear, but their fear keeps them locked. Like they don't communicate when they're in that state of mind, for example, and they don't want to open up about it. Like my first instinct would be like, okay, let's create reassurance. It's a safety net. This is nothing's gonna happen if you say you're scared of something, or if nothing. Yeah, like. This is a space where we're all going to grow. Like nothing bad is going to happen from these things. Is this what helps loosen this tension, or?
I go even further back than that, or like I'd call it two things. Number one is I spend time. Like if I observe that in somebody, I spend time with that person. Subtly, I pick the time and the place and make it very natural, but I spend time. That's it, nothing more. And if they're open to it, then I have my other one, which is let's go for a walk. Yeah, I just take people for a walk. I go, come on, let's walk with me. And walking's great with people because something about moving the body in a nice environment or in an environment and not feeling so threatened about things or whatever helps people talk. So I spend time with people. I don't deliberately. I guess if you take the NLP approach, it's kind of rapport building. Yeah, you build rapport and you're observing and listening all of the time. But I like to take your other explanation of compassion and love and those things, and I spend time with the person and get to know them and go from there.
It's a bit weird, like how walking can help us, at least for me, jog out. Like it helps me get out my thoughts. I pace when I'm thinking. It helps me organize my thoughts. So like a walking meeting is more effective, for example, than let's sit and write things out. And also it can be briefer, so it feels more energetic. So
depending on the person, yeah.
Yeah, it is always a little bit. I mean, in that case, Omar, I think if you realize that the walk is not really doing much in one way, shape or form, then you can always shorten the walk.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's Vetrezz, you see boot camps, guys. Vetrezz has seen this in action. You know, play table tennis, play billiards, play darts.
Yeah.
Spend time. Right? That's what you're really doing.
Definitely.
You're not sharing professionalism. You're sharing space and time together. And I think that can help you identify a lot of things.